I am about to create Jerusalem as a joy, and its people as a delight. I will rejoice in Jerusalem, and will delight in my people. Well, for those of you who don't know, I and 13 of us, 12 of us, 13 including me, just returned back from the Holy Land. Wow, it was quite an adventure. Quite an adventure. I did warn our pilgrims before we went. I said, just beware, this will not be a vacation. This is a pilgrimage. And indeed, it was a pilgrimage. It was not a vacation. And in some ways, I don't know where to begin. How do you condense 10 days of a whirlwind into just a few words? Of course, the question is, why would anyone travel over 14,000 miles there and back and go to this tiny little country in the Middle East? Why would we do that? Why? What were we looking for? What were we hoping to see or find or experience? Just to give you some context, Israel, Palestine, Oregon is over 4 times the size of Israel, Palestine. And Oregon, I think, has, around 3 million people? Is it something like that? Israel has 8.7 million people. In addition to which, there are almost 4 million tourists, visitors, pilgrims every year. So Palestine, Israel is the same size as New Jersey. Actually, New Jersey is slightly larger, but 60% of Israel is uninhabitable because it is desert. So you have all these people crammed into this tiny habitable space. And when we were there, there were a lot of people from Africa, a lot of people from Poland. We just happened, the weekend that we were in Jerusalem, in the Old City, 2 cruise ships docked, and so 10,000 of the pilgrims joined us. And the Via Dolorosa, it was like sardines, we were body to body, and I was joking with some of our folks that, we've gotten to know each other a little bit more intimately than we were expecting. But there we are. It was a pilgrimage. It was a pilgrimage, not a vacation. Why did we go? And what were we looking for? Well, I think we all went for the same reason. All of us from different backgrounds. We were joined with 18 folks from an African-American Pentecostal church from New York and upstate New York. So very different backgrounds, but we were all there for the same reason. We wanted to meet Jesus. We wanted to meet Jesus. We wanted to know Jesus better. We wanted to meet Jesus in the rocks and the stones and the beach at Galilee where he walked. We wanted to meet him in the rocks and the stones. We wanted to meet him in the water of Lake Galilee, the water of the Jordan. We wanted to meet Jesus in looking at the same mountains. They're not really mountains, not compared to Oregon. They're more like hills, but to them they're mountains. But we wanted to meet Jesus by looking at the same mountains that he looked at, by seeing the same sky that he saw, by breathing the same air. We wanted to meet Jesus. Not just in our minds, but in our bodies, by touching and tasting and smelling and feeling the land that he was born to and lived in. We were all there for the same reason. And all these other pilgrims, and it was Ruth that said, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I played rugby, it was worse than a rugby scrum. There were so many people packed into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is the church that houses the tomb of Jesus. And but as Ruth said, in some ways, what an incredible thing. We were all there, all these people from all different nations and walks of life, and we all just wanted to touch Jesus. We all wanted to meet Jesus in a more profound way. And yes, there were some people who were really rude, who were more elbows than politeness. And it was hard sometimes not to be Christian. And here we are in this sacred place, and I'm thinking these terrible thoughts about my brothers and sisters. See that one? He's just kind of wound his way to the front. That is so unfair. But he, like me, was there for the same reason, to meet Jesus, to touch Jesus, to know Jesus. And our fellow pilgrims from New York, we were so different. And yet, actually, we didn't have one theological discussion. At least I didn't. The theology really didn't matter. And their bishop celebrated communion for us in the garden too, and it was a sacrament. They didn't say the same words, they didn't pray the same prayers, and yet it was the same God. And the theology in that time and place didn't really matter at all, because Jesus had brought us all together. And Jesus, as he promised in the scriptures, had bridged all of the divides. In Christ there is neither male or female or Greek or Jew or slave or free. All in Christ are one. And that's one of the miracles of going to places of pilgrimage. That all the things that divide us, all the sort of little picky things that, oh, that person's not quite like me. Oh, we're different in this way. And that, or, well, I've got it all sorted and I don't know about the others. It didn't really matter. It didn't matter at all. And so in that sense, we saw Jesus and we tasted Jesus and we heard Jesus, because actually we saw Jesus, I think, in each other. And that's the thing, isn't it? That you don't need to go 14,000 miles on pilgrimage to meet Jesus. You don't need to go to all these ancient places to know the Lord. But we know Jesus when we see each other. We see Jesus in the faces of the people around us, those people that we love and those people that we despise, those people that we're absolutely like, and those people who we scratch our heads and say, I don't understand where you're coming from at all. But we saw Jesus, we met Jesus, we experienced Jesus. And you can too. That's why we're here this morning. Why are you here? I think because we want to touch, we want to know, we want to hear. Here's the last thing. How do we know? How can we touch Jesus? Through the scriptures, yes. Through our prayers, yes. Through our worship, of course. Through the beautiful water and forests and mountains of Oregon, indeed. But mostly we come to know Jesus through each other. And you think of who Jesus was, and this is one of the things that really came home to me again, going to the Holy Land for the second time. Jesus was poor. Jesus chose to be poor. Jesus was the lowest of the low. He had no connections, no power, no beauty even. And on the cross, he gave it all away. His body, his life, everything. And so I think that we come to see Jesus and know Jesus when we see and know people who are like him, the lowest of the low, the poorest of the poor, those who are hungry this morning, those who are thirsty this morning, those who have nowhere to lay their head this morning, the people that hang outside the post office this morning, the people who we say, they smell really bad. I'm sure Jesus smelled really bad too most of the time. He was on the road. They didn't have showers. Those are the faces of Jesus in our own midst and in our own time. It was such a privilege to be able to go to all of those sacred places, steeped in thousands of years of prayer and hope and love and expectation. But Jesus is here among us today. And that's the thing. The final thing I will say, there's one place called the Garden Tomb. I don't have time to describe it. Look it up on the internet. It's a place of exquisite beauty. And in it there is a tomb from the time of Jesus. And the thing is, and this is what we kept saying over and over again, it was empty. It was empty. Of course, that's why we're here. Because Jesus wasn't left in the tomb. Jesus rose from the dead. And that is why you and I are here. And that is why Jesus can bridge the gaps, the distance between us. In him we are one. So go out today. As we went all the way to Palestine, Israel, go out into the streets and highways of Corvallis, of Lebanon, of Philomath, of Albany, of Monroe, wherever it is, and find Jesus for yourself.